I'm completing the entire mainline Pokemon franchise in chronological order with 2 challenges standing in front of me. The first, we're doing a hardcore Nuzlocke in all 39 mainline Pokemon games released in North America, and the second, no repeat Pokemon may be used. For instance, if I used Rowlet in Sun version, I can't use it in Moon, Ultra Sun, or in this case, Legends Arceus. Good thing I didn't evolve Dartrix when I chose Rowlet. But with only around 200 Pokemon available in Legends Arceus, will I be able to get through with so few remaining Pokemon? Well, let's find out. Make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel since we're less than 6,000 subscribers away from hitting my goal of 200,000 by the end of 2023. Last but not least, I want to announce my Professor Oak's Subathon. Over on Twitch, I'll be streaming around the clock starting on December 22nd, where I'll be attempting to finish the last 4 remaining Professor Oak challenges that I haven't covered on this channel in Platinum, Ultra Sun and Moon, Legends Arceus, and Scarlet and Violet with the new DLC's release. So if you want to help extend the timer and come enjoy the ride, you can follow me over there with the link in the description and in the pinned comment. But with that, let's get right into it. So Legends Arceus is quite the oddball of the franchise. Well, yes, most people think this isn't a mainline title, Game Freak and the Pokemon Company do deem this game as mainline, so I'm taking it down. Then again, I don't think Coliseum and XD are mainline, but dang it, they have normal battle mechanics, so I did them anyway. With that said though, we have a pretty sparse list of encounters available from the get-go, but considering I did hold off on evolving Dartrix back when I picked up Rowlet during our Gen 7 outings, that means I can hold Rowlet found here on the Prelude Beach until it evolves into Decidueye and use it from there, but we'll be waiting for a while before we can get to that level cap. Not a problem for me though, as there are a few encounters in the Obsidian Fieldlands that I can obtain that'll at least get me through the beginning battles. Following the boatload of tutorial garbage that I wish was skippable in subsequent playthroughs, I'm finally able to start roaming the Obsidian Fieldlands to pick up said encounters. Do note though that I initially started this file to also complete the Professor Oak's challenge of this game, while also reserving my encounters in another box to use in battle, so you'll be seeing my star ranking increase quickly while also having a massive amount of grid items and Seeds of Mastery, which is kinda why I wanted to do both on one file. It actually gives me a reason to grind these items out to make sure my eligible Nuzlocke Pokemon were actually good enough to compete in slightly wonky battle mechanics, especially with revenge KOs being so prevalent in a game where speed works more like a more traditional RPG like Octopath Traveler, giving yourself or your opponent chances to move more than once in a row at times based on your speed, so I need to be extremely cautious here. Digressions aside though, those few eligible encounters on my list include Eevee from the Horseshoe Plains, which still has exactly one evolution that I can still use, Pichu from the Floro Gardens, and Mime Jr. from the Sandgem Flats. While I can't use Eevee yet and need to collect satchels to obtain an Ice Stone from the trader back in Jubilife Village, I can at least use Pichu and Mime Jr. without evolving them for our first major battle against Mai in the Obsidian Fieldlands. I made Pichu as she only has Munchlax, immediately going for a strong style Thunderbolt. Told you I had a bunch of Seeds of Mastery, but also the money for Zisu's Move Tutor service, so this makes battles at the beginning of the game a bit of a breeze. That Thunderbolt paralyzes and ensures that Munchlax can't move for the turn, but seeing as that did less than half, I opt for an Agile style Thunderbolt so that next time I get to attack, I'll get 2 turns in a row, doing about half of the strong style as Tackle does less than half, letting me deliver 2 more Thunderbolts in a row to KO and win the fight. And people in my Discord server thought I would have nearly 0 chance of winning this fight with how limited my encounter availability was. But from here, the rest of the Obsidian Fieldlands map is open, making it possible for me to collect those satchels for the points needed for an Ice Stone to evolve my Eevee into Glaceon, adding a 3rd member to the team while also letting me get a busted moveset through Zisu, learning Calm Mind, Water Pulse, Ice Beam, and Shadow Ball for great coverage and offensive options before hitting our first roadblock in the Alpha Kricketune. This is an easy fight, after all, it's a Kricketune, so 2 Ice Beams from Glaceon takes it down, all while barely taking any damage in return, KOing and leaving me back to my own devices, meeting Adamant and Irida, getting the Word Ear mount, and doing the second to last fight before Noble Cleaver by facing off against Leon and his partner Gumi, who's immediately obliterated by a single Glaceon Ice Beam. Don't worry, trainers will ramp up in difficulty closer to mid to late game. The beginning is definitely more focused on the catching stuff instead of the battling, but I guess that's what happens when you make Pokemon into a collectathon similar to a Super Mario 64 or Banjo-Kazooie compared to a traditional Pokemon game. But we do get to add a 4th team member before facing off against Cleaver, and that's by catching myself a Scyther near the Grand Tree Arena, and since I already have a hunk of Black Augurite, that means I can just evolve it straight into Cleaver, giving me yet another usable encounter. This is a round where I split my file off from my Professor Oak's challenge file, since in case you guys didn't know, the Pokédex in this game has several ranks of completion, including perfecting every entry so that it gets a little sparkling Pokeball symbol, as opposed to the regular symbol that appears when you've reached Research level 10. And considering the Oak Challenge requires you to complete the Pokédex as much as possible before every gym badge, or in this case every noble Pokémon, this challenge can take well over 500 hours to complete, and I think it would be a mistake to deprive you guys the end of this series while I chip away at that. But that's enough about that, back to the Nuzlocke as Iriel wants to test my strength before facing off against Cleaver. And that's by having a Glaceon mirror match where mine comes out on top thanks to the power of 2 Shadow Balls, taking less than half damage over the course of the battle before finally facing off against Cleaver. Now, theoretically, I can do all of the noble battles without sending out a single Pokemon. Very funny, considering that means we can just not risk any of them in these fights, and rely on reaction time and skill alone, but to have a little more fun, I decided to engage in the Cleaver mirror match, using my ability to hit it with Stealth Rock faster than it could hit me, and just hit it twice to keep it stunned long enough to finish off its HP with the Force Palms, calm it down, increase our level cap, and clear our first noble. Now that we're clear to head to the Crimson Mirelands, I figured I'd add 2 new members to the team now that the level cap has increased, those being Baneri from the Heartwood and Stantler from the Deer Track Path. I also have a Wormadam that I caught from the Grueling Grove during my Hunt in the Oak Challenge portion of this file, though that's still a bit too high level for me to want to use until I beat Akari. Hilariously, she has nearly my same beginning party as I did against Mai, leading off with Mime Jr. as I go with Stantler, bashing her with a single Mega Horn to KO and leave just Pikachu. She's now able to get off both Thunder Wave and Thunder Shock before Stantler's able to move, but with the coverage I have thanks to Bulldoze, it's a swift one-shot KO to win the battle. Now for the Mirelands themselves, there are a few encounters I'd figured I'd bank while I'm here, such as Carnivine from the Golden Lowlands, Teddiursa from Ursa's Ring, which I can't use until it evolves into Ursaluna, considering I used Ursa Ring all the way back during my Gen 2 leg of this challenge, Stunky from the Scarlet Bog, Murkrow from the Cloudpool Ridge, which I can't use until I get a Duskstone to evolve it into Honchkrow, since I did use Murkrow in the Gen 7 leg of this. I also grabbed a Porygon from a Space-Time Distortion, which I do count as its own separate area, all while picking up a Dawnstone from it just in time to pick up a male Ralts from the Gapejaw Bog, which I can't use until it evolves into Gallade, considering I've already used the entire Gardevoir line. But I'm more than prepared to use Gallade, while also grinding up enough Satchels for more points to get the Duskstone, Upgrade, and Dubious Disc in order to obtain Honchkrow, Porygon 2, and Porygon Z for the team. Now that's a pretty strong team base. Glaceon, Wormadam, Cleaver, Gallade, and Porygon Z are quite strong Pokemon for this point in the game, so much so that our next important fight in the Salacion Ruins against Volo is easily handled by just one of them in Gallade, using Poison Jab to super effectively KO Togepi in one shot, though the speed and revenge KOing tendencies of Legends Arceus nearly rear their ugly head here, as Gibble's able to come in second, hitting both an Agile Style and regular Bulldoze to bring Gallade down to just 18 HP, but thanks to a single Ice Punch following that, we're able to get the KO and escape unscathed. Just gotta make sure I keep up with surviving attacks upon a KO, otherwise we're gonna see a lot of our potential options for later in the game go down like flies. Straight after, we've got to retrieve a wall fragment missing from the Salacion Ruins from the Misfortune Sisters, with Coin deciding to battle us with her Toxicroak, once again destroyed by Gallade, despite forgetting to confirm the change in moveset to include the quad effective Psycho Cut. Instead, just opting for 2 Ice Punches to KO through a Venoshock that did less than half damage to win. Really do wish these beginning battles had some more Pokemon to fight though. I'm not the biggest fan of steamrolling the beginning just because the game wasn't built with battles in mind first. All good though, as we've got another one right after against the Ursaluna mount, testing our strength before we're eligible to use it, only to die to Gallade's Ice Punches, with the first giving Ursaluna the new Frostbite status, and KOing with the second, all without taking any damage whatsoever. Perfect! Now with Ursaluna in my hands, we can go find a Rizu, save her from her messed up ankle, and finally challenge the noble Lady Lilligant. By the way, is it just me, or did those who designed this Hisuian form absolutely just ask, how do we make this plant while designing it? I don't mean to be vulgar, but there's no way that they made this without any semblance of intent in doing so. Anyway, this fight is easy, literally no need to send out a Pokemon for it, but I figured I'd throw out Gallade at least once to Psycho Cut it in order to make the fight faster, winning quickly and giving us our second of 5 noble victories. Oh geez, I just realized that's the name of a Black and White era TCG expansion. I must have opened over 100 packs of that as a kid and never pulled the Full Art Victini, despite having pulled both the Full Art Zekrom and Reshiram from the BW base set, as well as the Thundurus and Tornadus from Emerging Powers. Good times when Ultra Rares were actually Ultra Rares, rather than the 50 plus we've been getting since the Gen 7 era, but I digress. Moving ahead to the Cobalt Coastlands, Irida is once again wanting to challenge me to another battle to test my strength, but even with a 2-on-1 against Glaceon and Eevee, Gallade's Drain Punch is more than enough to one-shot both in a row to win that fight. Nothing else to do other than talk to Polina over in the Coastlands themselves, head back to Iskan's camp, then head out to the Dreadwood Haunt to pick up a Dusclops, both for making the Basculegion food, and as my encounter for the area. No battle needed against this mount either, so we're good to just head into the water and onto Firespit Island to rescue one of Polina's Growliths from the Misfortune Sisters, this time wanting to battle me in a 3-fight gauntlet, starting off with Clover and her Abomasnow as I go with Gallade, hitting her straight away with a Drain Punch to KO before anything else can happen. Second up is Coin, once again with her lone Toxicroak, being obliterated by Gallade's Psycho Cut and leaving just Charm, who has 2 Pokemon. I'm not able to change my lead out in between these fights, but that's fine as she leads Rhydon, I go with Gallade, and immediately swap for Porygon Z, not even giving her a chance to move before choosing my attack in Ice Beam, KOing straight away and leading to Gengar, who hits a Dark Pulse for less than half damage. It's nowhere near enough for me to worry though, as a single Psychic is enough to put her away, winning the series of battles in convincing fashion. All that leaves is the newly evolved Frenzied Noble Arcanine, and while this fight can seem pretty intimidating, as long as you know the patterns and tells for when Arcanine's about to charge for attacks, as well as staying away from the center of the arena once it gets to around half HP and creates the Ring of Fire, then finally pelting it with multiple bombs before it gets the chance to fire off any of those fire bombs during the charging phase, it's more than enough to be able to take it down without sending in a single Pokemon, subduing the Frenzied Noble and leaving 2 more to go before Endgame. Before being able to head off into the Coronet Highlands, we're bombarded with new characters in Ingo and Melly, though they're not too important just yet, since if I'm not beating their Pokemon into submission yet, I don't care all that much. Instead, Adamant challenges me to a fight this time instead of Irida before we get to head out there, using a Leafeon as I go with Glaceon, hitting it with an Ice Beam straight away to KO, leaving just the Small Fry Eevee to be obliterated by the same attack next turn to give me yet another win. Jeez, almost 4 areas in now and we're still dealing with trainers only with 2 Pokemon. Thankfully, this does start to change here in the Highlands, but not before Melly challenges me with a single Skuntank, something that Porygon Z is able to handle with Tri-Attack, hitting the first 2 nearly KO all while Skuntank hits a Poison Jab for a little under half, then goes down to the second to net me the win. Once we pass through the Ancient Quarry though, Ingo's finally ready to test my abilities, and whether or not I'm worthy of wielding the only Pokemon that never left puberty, Sneasler. Honestly, when the TCG isn't able to make a Pokemon design look cool, then there's a huge problem with it. They really should have just gone for a Hisuian Weavile that had the same white and purple color scheme of Sneasel while retaining the large Wolverine-esque claws. Then we would have had a really sick Pokemon, but I digress. After switching up my moveset and crossing through the Ancient Quarry though, Ingo's ready for battle and he's got a team of 3 Pokemon for the first time so far. He leads Machoke, so I go with Gallade, attacking first with an Agile-style Psycho Cut for the one-shot leading to Gliscor. I figure with the Agile style, I should be able to get out of dodge, but of course I'm not, as Gliscor is able to hit a quick attack for around a third, then follow up with an Aerial Ace before I get the chance to move, revenge KOing Gallade without giving me an option. Well, it was bound to happen eventually, but unfortunate that it happened to my best physical attacker. That's fine though, as I can just revenge KO him with Glaceon's Ice Beam, leaving just Tangela. Now sadly, he's able to get a Stun Spore off and hold Glaceon down for 2 turns of paralysis in order to hit not just 1, but 2 Ancient Powers to bring Glaceon into red HP. But thankfully, 3rd time's the charm in terms of trying to attack, as an Agile-style Ice Beam is able to connect to KO and win me the fight. Not surprised at all that I wasn't able to carry myself through this game deathless, since if it wasn't going to be here, it was certainly going to be against Volo at the end of the game. Considering he carries 8 Pokemon with 2 legendaries, I'm feeling a bit of the Colosseum rules again and drafting in an equal amount of legendaries to confront Giratina's 2 forms, but only being allowed to use them against Giratina, which in turn gives me a more difficult main fight since I would only have 4 Pokemon to fight against his main team of 6, but we'll see though, that's still a good ways away. With Sneasler in tow though, we can swap Gallade out for Hisui and Decidueye considering that the level cap is now high enough for me to use it, then get towed around in a funny basket by Sneasler before taking on Melly one more time as she's guarding the Noble Electrode's boss chamber. She's an unfair bastard and uses 3 Pokemon at once with Skuntank, Skorupi, and Zubat, but thanks to Porygon Z, I'm able to take down Skuntank with 2 tri-attacks, all while taking less than half damage. Then I can bust out an Agile-style Thunderbolt to take out Zubat, culminating in 2 turns of recover usage before KOing Skorupi with Psychic at full HP and win the fight. These HP healing moves, like Roost and Recover, feel near essential if I want to try and steer away from these Horde-esque battles and revenge KOs, and admittedly, I kind of enjoy them for being more versatile, like healing a quarter of your HP bar if you use the Agile version, or healing 3/4 if you use the Strong style, seeing as it occasionally lets you recover some HP or more HP, but with the Agile style you can still potentially get an attack in before your opponent gets to move. It's a pretty fun strategy that you get to see in other RPGs and really helps get people's feet wet if they plan on moving into more complex turn-based RPGs like something like Bravely Default. Then again, Pokemon fans don't tend to play anything else for some godforsaken reason. Please, go play something like Mega Man X and gain some appreciation for a different game. How do I have a damageless Castlevania challenge run on this channel that's 9 months old with only 13,000 views, yet people want to watch me steamroll Let's Go with a single haha oddish using candies and that gets over 100k? Seriously considering making a second channel in the new year just for non-Pokemon challenges, since they seem destined to die here when you consider the few I've done on this channel being the least viewed videos. Sorry about complaining about this though, but seriously, Pokemon fans, please open your eyes and realize that other games are far superior to this franchise. I still play these out of nostalgia because Pokemon Firered was like my second game I ever played. I got it when I was like 3 years old, and as an adult, I'm trying to pull as much challenge as I physically can out of them to make entertaining videos. That and the development history as well as things like speedrunning these games and how techniques develop over time is super cool. But if you want to play a game for its story, deep gameplay experience, higher quality graphics and sound, and other better things, then you're much better off playing an Octopath Traveler, a Persona 5, Final Fantasy VII Remake,
Alive,
Illusion of Gaia, Rise of the Sinister,
Lunar the
Star
Star,
Dark
Secret
Cloud,
of Mana,
Grand
World
Tales of
Issue,
Symphonia,
Radiant
Mother
Historia,
3,
Dragon
Earthbound,
Quest XI,
Paper
Mario
Mario Kart, Xenoskies of Arcadia,
One and Two,
Gaia,
Shining Legends
Saga.
2.
So the Noble Electrode fight is probably the most difficult outside of the very last one with Arceus, considering you have to dodge homing Electro Balls, Voltorb bombs, and a self-destruct attack that I think covers like half of the field, and considering my controller's left stick is starting to die, this was a bit of a difficult fight, but I still managed to pull through, pulling out Porygon Z to strike it down with an Agile style and Strong style tri-attack so that I can get some more added hits in. But considering I don't want to risk my Pokemon as much as possible, in the second attempt of knocking his HP down, I used Decidueye's Aerial Ace as well as Pichu's Swift, managing to keep both of them alive as I continued to bombard Electrode with Mountain Bombs, finally getting the win against the second to last Noble of the game. All that remains of them is Avalugg, and admittedly that one's got quite the difficult journey with the fights in the Alabaster Icelands. Before I can head out to the Icelands though, Akari is once again ready for battle, this time with 3 Pokemon as she leads Mr. Mime. I lead Porygon Z and just blast it into space with Shadow Ball, one-shotting it as Staravia enters second. Of course, she tries to get the revenge KO here with a Quick Attack and Brave Bird combo, but Porygon Z is able to hold on at just 39 HP, using both an Agile style and regular recover to get back to full, as Staravia once again just bombards me with the same Quick Attack Brave Bird combo. So once again, I can get 2 turns in a row by using Agile and regular recover to get back to nearly full HP, only taking a single Brave Bird this time before going for one more normal recover, expecting a Brave Bird to finally finish off Staravia entirely from recoil, but instead she goes for Roost, giving me nearly full HP and free reign to fire off an Ice Beam to KO and leave just Pikachu. It has Iron Tail, which does a little less than half, so I just go for recover out of a little bit of, I don't even know, I think just wanting to see what it does first. But considering I've seen Iron Tail now, and I don't want to see the defense drop off of Iron Tail next turn, I decided to test how much damage I could do with Tri-Attack following a second Iron Tail. And apparently it just doesn't matter, as I'm able to one-shot it from full, KOing and winning the fight single-handedly. Jeez, that, once again, the double attack was nearly fatal. Super happy that it was just a Staravia that didn't have close combat instead of Staraptor, since Porygon would have had to do some swapping out before KOing Mr. Mime. Though, at that point, I probably would have just led with something else. It's really hard to play around getting revenge KO'd in this game unless you have a Pokemon that literally resists all of the opponent's attacks on all of their Pokemon. So getting through fights without deaths can be a minor miracle at points. But with that, our last area to trek through is the Alabaster Icelands, which doesn't have too many fights, but the fights that we do have to take care of are Horde-esque in nature, with the first one against Garrick being against a Glalie and Frostlass combo. Thankfully, with Cleaver, we're able to outspeed Glalie and nail a Stone Edge to one-shot it, only taking 40 damage from the Frostlass's Hex, as a strong-style Stone Axe gets the KO next turn. That's not all though, as once we're done chasing Sabi around, we finally end up in the Snowpoint Temple ready to take down a trio of Sinnoh's Gen 1 evolutions in Rhyperior, Magmortar, and Electivire all at the same time, using a lead Porygon Z and just barely missing out on the KO on Rhyperior with an Ice Beam. Thankfully, we do get the Frostbite status here, all while dodging Electivire's Thunder Wave, taking a Magmortar Flamethrower for a third, and a Rhyperior High Horsepower that brings Porygon Z all the way to red HP, so I'm probably in a precarious position for anything to go down if I swap, or for Porygon to get sniped off by Magmortar and Electivire if I just take the KO on Rhyperior now. So instead, I swap into Pichu in the effort to conserve my actually useful team members, let Rhyperior die to the Frostbite, and then let Pichu die off to the Electivire and Magmortar. But since I get a turn upon swapping, I can use an Agile-style Swift to KO Rhyperior, all while taking a Thunder Punch from Electivire for a third, an Agile-style Poison Gas, as well as a Flamethrower from Magmortar that Pichu somehow survives. And considering that's 2 Pokemon left, I think we can actually save Pichu by swapping into Cleaver, finishing Magmortar off with a Stone Axe before taking an Electivire Thunder Wave, finally nailing it with a critical hit Stone Edge next turn to KO, and somehow survive this nasty 3-on-1 without a single death. But that's not it. The last fight before getting Braviary is against the bird itself, though thankfully we do have Haunchcrow to wall against the psychic typing, using 2 Night Slashes to KO without taking any damage thanks to a Hurricane Miss to win the fight. Not bad. Really shocked I managed to make it through that Trade Evo trifecta, to be honest. But with that, all that's left is Avalugg, so 1 piece of Eternal Ice later, and a quick flight over to Avalugg's Legacy, I'm ready to take this thing down. This one's pretty easy with how large of a target we have, not to mention how slow and telegraphed the attacks are. The Ice Breath Puffs are super easy to roll through and get about 2 to 3 bombs apiece through them. Ice Beam is easily rolled through, and the overhead Icicle Spears kinda just require repeat dodging, but considering this is also an Ice and Rock type, Cleaver is able to roll in and just absolutely batter the poor thing with a strong style close combat to one-shot it, and leave it to be quelled by a few more bombs, finishing our last noble battle. There are a few stones left unturned though, but first, a nice dinner of potato mochi. Surely nothing will go wrong tomorrow after all of the noble Pokemon have been quelled. Surely the space-time distortions above Mount Coronet will close, absolutely holding... Wait. Space-time distortions? Why does that abbreviate to STD? I guess that's what you get when you make Hisui and Lilligant fuckable. The endgame begins as we're cast out of Jubilee Village, and only a few battles are between here and Dialga and Palkia. I end up choosing Irida at the beginning here so that I can battle Palkia and do the whole bomb fight with Dialga, considering that partial water typing on Palkia should make it easier to whittle down with the likes of Pichu, and another potential encounter in Electivire that I'm planning on grabbing as well. But first, we've got the 3 alpha Pokemon guarding the Lake Trio, with Goodra easily taken down by 2 of Decidueye's triple arrows, Zoroark is easily beaten by a single Porygon Z Dark Pulse, and of course Overqwil is also defeated by Porygon Z, but with a bit more difficulty considering I don't have any super effective moves for it, instead just shifting between Recover and Thunderbolt to stay healthy and out of KO range, with any strong style moves and just battering it to death. While technically I could capture these and use them as encounters due to them showing up as in these caverns, I don't really think I need any of them, at least if I'm looking at it through the lens of having to try to survive their attacks while attempting to capture them in a regular battle. It just doesn't seem worth it. With the red chain in tow though, following the 3 lake visits, all I've got to do is take down Benny and Kamado up in Mount Coronet and the Temple of Sinnoh respectively. And here's where stuff starts getting very difficult considering they both have 4 Pokemon, competently leveled in comparison to my current level cap of 65, and with rather powerful movesets. First up is Benny, leading Miss Magius as I go with Porygon Z, unfortunately being outsped and hit with Hypnosis before getting a turn. Though before I started to think about the fight itself, I walked over to Benny and thought, you know, it would be really funny if I could take a page out of Bryan Danielson's book and kick his f***ing head in. But alas, I cannot, so I must engage in battering his ethereal animals into submission. Porygon Z is able to hit a Dark Pulse on the crackback from Hypnosis, nearly one-shotting, but of course he's able to heal it straight away with a Max Potion, leaving me to nearly KO with a second as Power Gem connects for slightly less than half. Now theoretically, I could stall out this Hypnosis with Recover, and admittedly, I'd like to do so considering he has a Gallade on his team and I don't want Porygon Z to die to a single fighting type move. So I hit Recover and take another Power Gem, doing so next turn and taking a third before the Drowsiness holds Porygon Z down for the turn. But luckily for me, this is the last turn of it as it wears off. But because Benny gets to choose his move on his turn rather than both of us choosing and then speed determining who goes first like other Pokemon games, he just gets to go for Hypnosis again and connects without a chance of keeping it off. That's fine though, I can simply Recover again, getting the Agile style off before hitting one more Dark Pulse to KO, leading to Sneasler. Well, I guess that's also fighting type, and sure enough, close combat and quick attack is enough to KO Porygon Z, giving me my second fatality of the run. What can you do, I guess, but at least I can bring in Decidueye to get the revenge KO with a Psycho Cut, hitting a quad effective attack to KO Sneasler and force in Gardevoir third, hitting Psychic for around 75% as I'm forced to swap, going for Honchkrow, but realizing I'm an idiot and this isn't traditional Pokemon, dying immediately to a strong style Dazzling Gleam. Oh, but you thought I was an idiot actually. No, in fact this was purposeful since I don't see Honchkrow being useful for the rest of the game. So instead, this is a sack to allow Cleaver 2 turns in a row to hit 2 X-Scissors to KO Gardevoir, staying at full HP in preparation for Gallade. We also have great defenses and stand up to a Drain Punch for around 40%, and Aerial Ace is able to nearly close out the battle as his final Pokemon hits one more Drain Punch to bring Cleaver down to about a third, leaving one more Aerial Ace to finish it and win me the fight. It's certainly rough to lose 2 Pokemon in one fight, but considering the endgame battles here end up being pretty difficult with revenge attacks all up the wazoo, and with the enemy teams having enough type and move diversity to basically require me to either tank an attack or 2 upon switch-in, or just die immediately, which makes it pretty imperative to have Pokemon that I have no qualms sacking. At least here I have a Dark-type replacement in Skuntank, as well as finally bringing in Wormadam to the team as we still have great special coverage with the likes of Bug Buzz, Energy Ball, Psychic, and Shadow Ball here. Almost as good as Porygon Z, but with a little bit of a lower base stat total. All good though, as there's one more Pokemon I want to grab before Kamado, and that is Electabuzz. Considering I've already used this, but the fact that I have an Electrizer that I purchased from the Ginkgo Guild back in Jubilife Village a while back, that's an easy Electivire and a great replacement for Pichu in the face of Commander Kamado. Speaking of which, he's leading Braviary and I'm leading with the Electivire, immediately going for a Thunderbolt to one-shot it out of the sky as Snorlax enters second, which then goes for a strong style high horsepower to one-shot Electivire. Well, I think that's the fastest I've ever seen a Pokemon go from getting added to the team, doing something helpful, and then immediately getting killed. Whoopsie. From there, I just opted to go into Skuntank though, since it has a decent enough defense stat to survive a high horsepower, going for an Agile style Poison Jab for about a quarter before going for a Strong style to bring him down to around 25%, leading to a Max Potion. All good though, as I can just hit another Agile style Poison Jab before taking said high horsepower, surviving at red HP and leaving me to swap into Wormadam, hitting an Energy Ball and lowering his defensive stats all while taking a Giga Impact for around 75%. Finally finishing it off with a Strong style Energy Ball as Golem comes in and grabs the Revenge KO with Stealth Rock. That sucks, but it's fine. There's a reason we brought it in here, and that's because of the repeat grass typing. Don't really need it when we have Decidueye on the team. But instead of going into Decidueye here, I instead go for Glaceon, using an Agile-style Water Pulse for over half as Rock Slide does around 60%, KOing with a second Agile Water Pulse and leaving just Kamado's Clefable, immediately going for Calm Mind. That at least saves me from the Revenge KO, so I just swap into Cleaver and start going for the heavy hitters in Agile-style X-Scissor, before getting hit with Fairy Doll Eyes, and Stone Edge, missing the first time but hitting the second to bring Clefable down to just over half, all while taking 2 Psychics that bring Cleaver to red HP. Considering I get 2 turns in a row right after Calm Mind wears off though, I'm able to get in another Stone Edge and Psycho Cut to get the KO on Clefable, ending the fight with a win, but with 2 more deaths added to the counter. Rough to see Electivire go right before Palkia, seeing as I was planning on using it with Thunder Wave to both status and damage it before going for the capture, but I suppose Pichu will suffice. It'll at least be funny. While Pichu does die to Palkia, it does the job of damaging enough with Thunder for me to capture it, leaving just Dialga following getting the Origin Ore after wiping the floor with Charm. Now for Dialga, I don't really think I want to send in a single Pokemon since these attacks are actually pretty telegraphed, assuming you looked up the fight beforehand and know what to look out for so that you don't die to any of the shockwaves or meteors he's raining down. Within a few minutes, the bombs weaken Dialga enough for me to throw the Origin Ball, capturing the Time Beast, and send me to the end credits. Now then, who's ready for some plate hunting? After getting the Stone, Fist, Draco, Iron, Blank, Dread, and Pixie plates, all that remains is the Spooky plate, and I know exactly who has it. After preparing my team of Cleaver, Glaceon, Decidueye, Dialga, Heatran, and Wordeer, I'm ready to face Volo. Though I will say I did not recognize it while building this team, but my first encounter in the Temple of Sinnoh was Palkia, not Dialga, and therefore making it an ineligible encounter for this run. You want to know when I realized this? After entering the fight with Volo, meaning we're going 5 against 8, baby. Hope we don't wipe. Volo's ready and equipped with Pianos and a lead Spiritomb as I lead Cleaver, immediately going for an Agile-style Sword stance to get both my attack boost and an attack off before Spiritomb gets the chance to move. But of course, we miss Stone Edge. Thankfully, he also misses with Hypnosis, so I'm free to get off a Stone Edge next turn that actually connects, KOing in one shot as Garchomp enters second. Well, Agile-style Iron Head does about a third, as a regular Iron Head brings Cleaver down to around 25%, but I need to conserve my Pokemon as much as possible for later in the fight. I cannot be one-for-oneing a fight with 8 Pokemon when I only have, well, 5. So I just opt to swap for Glaceon, thankfully getting an attack on him before taking anything in return by using Ice Beam to KO as Lucario enters third. He goes immediately for Bulk Up, saving Glaceon from certain Aura Sphere death as I swap for Decidueye, taking a close combat for less than half as his defense stats return to normal, giving me plenty of time to get a Roost off while a second close combat lowers his defenses. Now that I have 2 turns in a row with Decidueye's high speed, I can get back to full HP with Roost, then use triple arrows for the super effective KO, wiping out 3 of his Pokemon as we still remain at the full 5, leading to Togekiss. Thankfully, he doesn't attack twice here, instead going for Air Slash, a quad effective move that still manages to do less than half, as well as a Calm Mind. Now, while I would love to sit here and roost up, I think I need to swap. This time going for Wordeer as we have Thunderbolt and it's able to tank a Moonblast really effectively. So I set up a Calm Mind with my first move, getting another turn straight after to deal out a strong Thunderbolt for well over half, forcing him into using a full Restore as a second Thunderbolt brings him down once again below half. But unfortunately, I lose my attack boost from Calm Mind wearing off. All good though, as Togekiss's Calm Mind wears off at the same time, letting me nab the KO with an Agile Thunderbolt to hopefully let Wordeer survive in response to his 5th Pokemon, Hisuian Arcanine. However, that's all for naught, as he just gets the chance to move first, blasting out a strong Style Crunch to super effectively KO my first of 5 Pokemon. However, this puts me in a great position as now I can bring in Glaceon, getting 2 turns in a row to hit it with 2 Water Pulses and leave just Roserade, which can't do much to Glaceon, instead going for an Agile Spikes for very little damage and a Petal Dance that still isn't able to bring Glaceon below half, allowing me to deal out an Agile-style Ice Beam to KO and win the first phase of this fight. Now, while technically this does cause a break in the battle, I don't get the chance to swap around my team or heal before Volo calls upon the power of Giratina, forcing me straight into leading with a very weakened Cleaver into the Renegade Pokemon. Fortunately, I do get the chance to move, and seeing the writing on the wall, I opt to go for Stone Edge to hopefully do good damage, but I should have just gone for a strong style for the higher accuracy as it once again misses, leading to a Shadow Force that both KOs Cleaver and obscures Giratina, increasing its evasion. Thankfully though, I can bring in Glaceon and connect with Ice Beam, doing well over half, but in response Giratina is able to hit both an Agile and regular Aura Sphere to KO Glaceon in return, leaving me with just 2 Pokemon against the 2 forms of Giratina. At least the evasion boost goes away upon Glaceon's downfall, allowing me to bring in Heatran and clean this fight up with Dark Pulse. Or that is what I would say if it had actually KO'd. Probably should have gone for Strong Style again, but thankfully Earth Power does less than half despite being quad effective, letting me hit a second one to KO as the Origin form emerges, hitting another Earth Power to nearly KO, but it's enough for me to survive and hit one more Strong Style Dark Pulse to do just about half damage to Giratina. It KOs Heatran on the crackback and leaves me with just Decidueye. And the only problem I have now is that the only attack I can connect with here is Psycho Cut, so I'm gonna need to keep my HP as high as possible to survive through whatever Giratina throws at me, so I go for Roost to top off Decidueye's HP as Shadow Force misses, giving me the opportunity to go for Bulk Up to raise both my offense and defense, dodging yet another Shadow Force in the process. Thank goodness, too, as Psycho Cut does around half of Giratina's remaining HP, hitting a critical hit Shadow Force next turn for less than half. Holy crap, I think we're favored now if a critical is only doing about 40%, and that's bypassing the defense buff that we have off of Bulk Up. So I'm good to just Roost again and go for Psycho Cut, unfortunately missing as Bulk Up wears off, leading to a third Shadow Force miss. How is this happening? I don't know, but I will take it as a second Psycho Cut manages to connect to bring Giratina into the red, but yet another Psycho Cut misses next turn, this time leading to Giratina using Earth Power for barely any damage whatsoever. I think it's out of Shadow Force power points, as it's resorting to that and Dragon Claw, letting my Roost get Decidueye back to full HP as Dragon Claw only does a third, finally allowing for the evasion boost that Shadow Force gave to Giratina earlier to wear off, and letting Decidueye deliver one final Psycho Cut to KO and end this crisis of a fight, and therefore winning me the run. Whew, holy guacamole, that was a mistake and a half! I cannot believe my brain let me think, oh, let me fight Palkia first and then I'll use Dialga against Volo, despite it not being my first Temple of Sinnoh encounter. I'm very happy this didn't end up being the entire series' downfall, going basically down the drain due to my incompetence, but thanks to Decidueye just being a hard wall against Giratina, I managed to make it out alive. But with that, here's the updated Pokemon used and... Wait a second. Why is Gallade already marked? Didn't I use Gardevoir? Are you kidding me? I used Gallade in Platinum? I thought I used Gardevoir. Well, I guess I screwed up the text document that I used to keep up my encounters and what you can potentially use in each game, and considering that run was done over a year ago, I can't say that I'm surprised this happened. Well, in the effort to keep as much integrity of this series as I can, I'm just gonna mark Gardevoir in place of Gallade so that I know I can't use it in Scarlet and Violet. But geez, I didn't expect myself to make a mistake that egregious. But hey, at least it happened in the game with the least impact in terms of battling, so I'm not too mad, and if you are mad that I'm not redoing this run because of that mistake, I understand your frustration, but I do these videos for entertainment's sake, and if a mistake happens once in a while like this, it's not that big of a deal, since I'd rather people just enjoy it instead of trying to min-max and try hard, as that's the kind of thing that makes runs unfun. That's why I don't play games like Radical Red, Emerald Kaizo, or do competitive battling like VGC or singles. But I do understand that it is a little bit wonky because the whole premise of the series is to not use repeat Pokemon. I just don't have the time to do another 25-hour run of Legends Arceus just to fix one little evolution mistake. I apologize, but that's just how it's gonna be. Anyway, with all that said, at least this scuffed run is behind me. 2 more games stand between me and potential victory, and those are the newest titles in Pokemon's lineup, Scarlet and Violet. Will I be able to conquer the Paldea region without issue, or will I finally fail? If you don't consider this a failure, but I don't because it's a stupid mistake, find out next time. But until then, remember to like the video, subscribe if you haven't already so we can hit that 200,000 subscriber goal. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you then.